Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of peanuts. Anyone who has ever had a dog knows how stubborn they can be when they smell something interesting. All it takes is one smell to trigger their curiosity, and from that moment on there's no stopping them. Today's strip, published on December 5th, 1950, revolves around this very concept and features Snoopy, Patty, and Charlie Brown as the main characters. Patty is walking Snoopy, but the little beagle seems to have a very specific target. His nose is glued to the ground, following a mysterious trail, and he has no intention of being distracted. Poor Patty tries to keep up with him, but the leash gets tighter and tighter, and the walk quickly turns into an out-of-control race. His unerring nose guides him to a very specific destination. Poor Charlie Brown, intent on enjoying an ice cream, who suddenly finds himself under Snoopy's watchful eyes. His reaction is immediate and without escape. He feels completely trapped. This strip is a perfect example of the simple and effective humor of the early Peanuts, with a scene that anyone who has ever had a dog can recognize. Schulz manages to perfectly capture the stubbornness and determination of a puppy, turning it into a hilarious moment. But there is also another interesting aspect. Snoopy, while still very close to a realistic dog, already begins to show personality traits that will become iconic. His determination, his cunning, and, of course, his insatiable passion for food. Charlie Brown, too, plays a key role here, becoming the unintended victim of this gag. Charlie Brown's final expression and exclamation are the perfect capstone to the strip, closing the scene with a touch of irony that makes it all the more memorable. In the first vignette, we see Patty carrying Snoopy on a leash. The little girl, in her usual plaid dress and bow in her hair, is walking briskly, but we can already see that Snoopy has a definite idea where she wants to go. The little beagle, with his nose glued to the ground, is sniffing insistently at something that has caught his attention. The inscription, "Sniff, sniff," reinforces this image and lets us know right away that Snoopy is not simply walking, but is on the trail of something. Schulz, in this vignette, highlights a typical aspect of canine behavior. When a dog perceives an interesting smell, there is no way to make him desist. Snoopy's stubbornness is already evident in this first picture, and Patty, despite holding the leash tightly, seems to be out of control. Visually, Schulz uses the uniform neutral background to maintain the focus on the two characters, a hallmark of the early Peanut strips, where the minimalism of the background served to give greater emphasis to the narrative and the action of the protagonists. In the second vignette, the intensity of the scene increases. Snoopy is quickening his pace and continues to follow his scent trail with determination. The leash is tight, and Patty, who is trying to keep control, is forced to walk faster. The expression on her face suggests that she is beginning to lose patience. The prone position of Snoopy's body, with his paws raised off the ground, suggests that the little beagle is completely immersed in his mission, heedless of his mistress. Even in this vignette, the words "sniff, sniff" are repeated, emphasizing how the action is becoming more intense and frenetic. Interestingly, Schulz manages to convey movement through a few details. The lines of the sloping ground give a sense of dynamism and suggest that Patty and Snoopy are going faster and faster. In addition, Patty's pose, with her arms slightly spread wide, shows her attempt to balance herself, as if trying to resist Snoopy's pulling force. In the third vignette, the situation gets completely out of Patty's hands. Snoopy is now launched toward his goal, and the little girl is forced to run to keep up with him. The leash is even tighter, a sign that the beagle's strength is dragging his mistress, with no chance to oppose. The most significant detail here is the slightly tilted shot, which accentuates the sense of movement and unbalance. Patty has her mouth open, as if she is trying to call out Snoopy or express her displeasure, but it is clear that the little dog has no intention of stopping. The use of the verb sniff repeated again emphasizes how determined Snoopy is to follow her lead. This scene is a perfect example of Schulz's ability to build a comic crescendo. We start from a quiet walk, move to a sudden acceleration, and arrive at the point where Patty has no more control, completely at the mercy of her dog's determination. In the fourth and final vignette, comes the climax of the gag. Snoopy has finally reached his destination, Charlie Brown, who is standing still with an ice cream in his hand. The scene is charged with irony, for only now do we understand what Snoopy was chasing all along. The beagle's unerring nose led him straight to Charlie Brown's ice cream, and now he is sitting innocently on the ground, waiting to see if he can get a taste. Charlie Brown, on the other hand, has an expression of pure dismay. With the ice cream still in his hand and his mouth open, he exclaims the word, "trapped." This reaction is hilarious because it turns a simple situation into something more dramatic. Charlie Brown is not really in danger, but the way he feels cornered by Snoopy makes the scene even funnier. Here we also see an early sign of Snoopy's cleverness. Although he has said nothing, his mere presence has already put pressure on Charlie Brown, who probably fears that his ice cream will no longer be his alone. The use of the exclamation, "trapped," is brilliant because it amplifies the comic impact of the scene and closes the strip to unexpected effect. The way in which Patty observes the scene is also interesting. After being dragged along the whole time, she now seems relaxed, as if she finally understood what was going on and merely witnessed the inevitable conclusion of this little adventure. Anecdotes, trivia, and insights. This December 5th, 1951 strip is a small narrative gem that shows how well Schulz knew how to make even the most ordinary moments of everyday life comical. A simple walk with the dog turns into an adventure thanks to Snoopy's curiosity and his irrepressible desire to follow a scent, which will lead him right in front of Charlie Brown, leaving him with no way out. One of the most interesting things to note is how Schulz often used the technique of repetition to build the comic rhythm of his strips. Here we see it in the way Snoopy keeps following the smell throughout the scene, keeping his attitude constant. The 4 vignettes give a feeling of inevitable progression. Patty tries to hold him back, but he is determined to follow it through to the hilarious conclusion. This kind of narrative construction is one of the hallmarks of Schulz's style. The very concept of following a scent is fundamental to the language of comics, especially when it involves animals. Schulz represents this simply and effectively with the repetition of the onomatopoeia sniff sniff. It is a visual choice that not only helps to understand what Snoopy is doing, but also increases the involvement of the reader, who can almost imagine the path the beagle is following. This is an example of how Schulz was able to convey an action in an essential way, without needing too many details. One very interesting detail concerns Patty's behavior. We notice that at first she seems calm, but then she begins to express more and more frustration as Snoopy becomes more obstinate. Although she is a character who will lose importance over time, in these early strips she often takes on the role of Snoopy's controller, trying to manage his behavior. This shows us how, in the beginning, Snoopy was still treated as a normal dog, and less as an independent character. Another thing that makes this strip special is the visual construction of the last vignette. After 3 vignettes in which Snoopy and Patty are always moving, suddenly everything stops. The contrast between the previous movement and the final static scene, with Charlie Brown simply exclaiming "trapped," makes the joke even more effective. It is a trick that Schulz will use many times in the Peanuts, creating anticipation and then concluding with a short, dry expression, which makes the gag even funnier. Finally, we can see this strip as an example of the classic theme of determination versus control. Snoopy, despite being on a leash, follows his instincts without caring who tries to stop him. It is a small foretaste of what we will see many times in the future. Snoopy will always do his own thing, even when others try to impose rules on him. Here we see him in a younger, less sophisticated version, but already with the same free spirit that will make him one of the most beloved characters ever.
If you enjoyed yourselves, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next friends.